Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the place to come to get all your property questions answered. And there's a lot of questions around at the moment, most of them some variation of what happens now. Well, that's true for both our questions today, and we are going to be answering both of them. Before we do that though, you've probably got questions of your own, so here's how to send them in.
You can call in on 013 808 0035 and you'll hear a voicemail message. Just leave your question there. Or you can go to propertyhub.net/ask and hit a button and leave your message there. Both very simple, no pressure, you don't speak to anyone, and you can take a second or third attempt if you mess it up. Now, luckily, that is a simple process, and we are delighted to have two more questions on this week. The first of which comes in from Steve.
Hello, Rob and Rob. My name's Steve. I'm ringing in with a question following really your podcast about letting your emotions not overtake you when you're making these decisions about property investment. We've got a property that's going through to purchase very soon, maybe by the end of this week or maybe by the end of next. And while I'm trying to take a long view and think about the long term, I must admit I'm a bit nervous about the potential impact of the virus and the economic shock that's sort of going on around the world around it. So I'm interested in your views on that and about how to think about the long term and not worry too much about what could be a short-term shock, or perhaps rethink and not press on with the purchase when there is potentially a big shock coming. So thanks for considering that, and thanks again for the podcast.
Steve, thank you for your question. We're getting so many questions like this in at the moment, and it's obvious to see why. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, never mind the market. So what should you do? Well, the first thing you should do is go back to listen to last Thursday's podcast if you've not already, because Rob and I tackle this in a big way, and we look at where we're at now, what we think is going to happen this year, and then beyond. And once you've listened to that, you'll know that this year we don't think a lot is going to happen. So should you plough ahead? Well, it depends on your point of view, because our point of view is that we will probably then go into either a really big boom or a depression. Now, fortunately, and we truly do believe this, that the most likely outcome is going to be the boom. But what this will come down to is your point of view. We have a point of view, an opinion, but we don't have a crystal ball. So you really need to ask yourself, what do I think is going to play out here? What's the most realistic scenario to me? Do your reading, do your research, look for a balance, and then come to your own conclusions. What I would say, though, is that if you look at the most negative scenario, your options are limited and there's not a lot you can do. So to give you some guidance on what we're doing as a business and property investors, well, we're planning for the best, because the worst is so bad that none of this really matters anymore, and we probably won't have a property podcast and probably won't have a property hub. I know that sounds quite grim, but luckily, we think that the most likely scenario is the boom scenario, which means that property prices will surge in years to come. So, Steve, I'll throw this back to you, and obviously none of us can hear your answer, but it's, what do you think? Once you've gathered everyone's opinions, done a bit of research, read up on past cycles, looked at the 18-year property cycle, hopefully at that point you can come to an opinion. What that opinion is will then guide you to the decisions you need to make.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Steve, don't feel bad about emotion coming into that decision. When we say you need to keep emotion out of a purchase and out of your investing in general, that's absolutely right, but that's always the ideal. Realistically, we're not robots. There will always be some kind of emotion in there, so you shouldn't feel like a lesser investor for letting those thoughts affect you. But the aim of the game is just keeping a lid on that as best you can. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This one is from Sarah.
Hi, Rob. Sarah from Teddington here. I'm about to purchase 2 flats in Salford, and one is due to exchange next week. I'm curious to know what you would do with the talk of the recession coming due to the pandemic. I'm debating delaying exchange, perhaps to see if I can take advantage of any interest rate drops, and also wondering if I could use the talk of recession to renegotiate, maybe to soften any drop in the market. Both properties are currently tenanted, and I'm happy with the yield. And as I plan to hold them for the long term, I plan to sort of ride out the market dips. But interested to hear your thoughts, and if you think I'm absolutely crazy for proceeding, look forward to hearing your answer.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. In many ways, a similar question to what Steve was asking, which is, should I carry on? Should I let what's happening affect my plans? I think in your case, Sarah, this is a bit of an easier answer because you've given us more specific information about what it is that you're trying to achieve, what the plan is here. So let's work through. You said that you're debating delaying exchange to see if you can take advantage of any interest rate drops. Well, I think it's very unlikely that that is something that we're going to see. The actual base rate can't really go any lower unless it goes negative, which is possible, but seems highly unlikely. And mortgage rates themselves are about as low as they can logistically get. There needs to be enough margin in there for lenders to actually be able to run their operations, even if they are getting access to money for virtually free. So it's hard to see how mortgage rates get any lower. And indeed, we haven't really seen products get any cheaper since the base rate was cut. What about using recession to your advantage to negotiate a discount? Well, you could do. You're probably not in a bad position to do that because compared to when the market is in full swing, the seller is going to have fewer options and they might be willing to stick with you as a buyer, even if you go back and try to drop the price on them. You could argue about whether that's the right thing to do, but let's not worry about the moral and just look at the practical for the time being. So you could do it. And if you were worried about the price that you were paying or the value that you were getting, I'd probably say that you should do that. Because now is not the market in which to be making a borderline purchase. But you've said that you're happy with the yield you're getting. Presumably you're happy with the price that you're paying and you're holding for the long term so you don't have to worry about any short-term factors affecting your ability to refinance or anything like that. So on that basis, it's a long-term investment and you seem to be thinking mainly about the yield and you're happy with the yield. Are you crazy for proceeding? No, I don't think so. Could you renegotiate and make that deal even better? Maybe you could, but let's say that you could do that and you could go back and get another 5% off. What difference would that make to your investment over the long term? And how would you weigh that up against the possibility of losing the deal and all the hassle involved and burning bridges with the agent that you're buying through? That's the calculation that you're going to have to make.
The final calculation you need to make is, will you be joining us on Thursday for the Property Podcast? Well, hopefully that's a no-brainer and you already know the answer. And beyond that, I hope you join us next week for Ask Rob and Rob, because, of course, we'll be back. So until then, take care, everyone. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.